The Xeraxian Empire had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, expanding its dominion through advanced technology, ruthless war strategies, and merciless tactics. Every planet they conquered was brought to its knees. However, they had never encountered a species like humanity. At first, they thought Earth was just another insignificant planet. But intelligence reports suggested that this assumption could be a mistake. Humanity was abnormally adaptable when it came to war. Their strategies were unpredictable. Most importantly, they did not fear losing. One of the Xeraxian warlords, High Commander Zaltor, stepped into the interrogation chamber to confront a captured human soldier. Across the cold metal table, bound in chains, sat a man who showed no signs of fear. "What is your name, human?" Zaltor asked, his metallic voice echoing through the room. The man smirked slightly. "My name is Captain James Carter, and if I'm here, that's bad news for you." Zaltor frowned. "Why are you humans so confident? Our armies, our fleets, our technology. We have conquered thousands of worlds. You are nothing but a species from a single planet." Carter leaned forward, locking eyes with Zaltor's dark reptilian gaze. "Have you ever heard of Stalingrad, Vietnam, Fallujah?" he asked. Zaltor shook his head. "What are those?" Carter's smirk widened. "Those were wars we were supposed to lose. But we won. We humans adapt to the worst scenarios. We fight like madmen. Even if we know we can't win, we'll make sure to drag our enemy down with us. And most importantly, we never surrender." A strange chill ran down Zaltor's spine. He knew nothing of humanity's war history, but now, he had to learn. Still, he pushed Carter's words aside. Human wars were intriguing, but ultimately this was Earth. A single planet, a single species. The Xeraxian Empire had conquered thousands. This war was already won. Zaltor finalized the invasion plan. 5 major fleets would descend upon Earth, wiping out strategic centers before human forces could organize. The invasion would begin in 24 hours. When the attack started, everything went according to plan. For the first 30 minutes, Xeraxian warships breached Earth's atmosphere, unleashing laser bombardments on major cities. News channels filled with footage of the invasion. Humanity was gripped by fear. Then, the humans fought back. Emergency war councils convened in Washington, D.C., the Pentagon, NORAD. For the first time in history, Earth's governments united completely. And then, humanity went to war. The first setback. The Xeraxians expected panic and surrender. Instead, humanity armed itself. New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow. Cities became resistant strongholds. Guerrilla warfare erupted everywhere. The second setback. The Xeraxians underestimated human military forces. U.S. Special Forces infiltrated invasion ships and sabotaged their systems. Russian Spetsnaz ambushed Xeraxian troops in the forests. China and India launched massive cyber attacks, crippling Xeraxian communications. Middle Eastern and Latin American fighters, hardened by decades of conflict, turned every street into a death trap. The third setback. The Xeraxians failed to account for human psychology. Their own species was genetically programmed to retreat after suffering heavy losses. But humans, they became even more dangerous. Suicide attacks, sabotage, and ambushes turned every alleyway into a war zone. Xeraxian soldiers soon realized that Earth itself was a death trap. And worst of all, humans learned. The Xeraxians assumed that humans would fight the same way from day one. But within days, humanity had adapted, reverse-engineered enemy technology, and devised counter-strategies. On the first day, humanity lost. By the third day, they struck back. By the 7th day, the Xeraxian Empire's greatest fleet retreated from Earth. Zaltor watched from his command ship as Earth remained unconquered. This was impossible. In just 7 days, humanity had delivered a crushing blow to the Zyraxian war machine. And now, Earth was preparing for a counterattack. Zaltor placed a trembling hand on his console. He had to warn the Empire. He had to tell them that this planet could not be subdued, that perhaps this species was a threat to the entire galaxy. But it was too late. Earth's governments had already begun modifying captured Zyraxian warships, and Captain Carter's words, once spoken in an interrogation chamber, now echoed across the galaxy. Trying to conquer humanity was a mistake, but declaring war on us? That was suicide. Earth was no longer prey. It was the hunter, and humanity was preparing for its first interstellar war. When the Tyrak fleet reached Earth's orbit, Carr was confident. Their advanced plasma weapons were more than enough to annihilate the planet's defenses. But something was strange. There was no response from the humans. Just as the first wave of attacks was about to be launched, a report arrived. The humans had sent them a message via radio signals. General Carr narrowed his eyes and turned to the communications officer. "Open the channel. Let's see what these humans have to say." A moment of silence passed before the holographic screen flickered and the human transmission echoed throughout the command center. "This is a message to all Tyrak forces. We are the guardians of Earth. We are watching you." The voice was cold and calm, spoken like an order. But the most terrifying thing was the absolute confidence behind it. "Our war fleet is deployed and tracking your every move. This is your last chance. Retreat." General Carr let out a mocking laugh. "Such arrogance. They expect us to retreat? With what army? Their fleets are nothing but specks of dust compared to ours." But suddenly the communications officer looked at the screen with concern. "Sir, the message contains an embedded data packet. Should I open it?" Carr hesitated for a moment. This could be a trap, but to understand these humans, he needed to see what he was dealing with. Trusting his instincts, General Carr raised his hand. "Do not open it immediately. Run a full analysis first. It could be a trap." The officer nodded and began working quickly. For several minutes, the only sounds in the command center were the clicking of screens and the hum of electronic devices. Finally, the officer looked up, his voice shaking. "Sir, this isn't just a message. It contains war data." Carr frowned. "What do you mean?" "Speak clearly." The officer took a deep breath. "This data packet contains information on human war tactics. But the most frightening part is that all the data is tailored specifically against our fleet's current formation. It's as if they've analyzed us in advance." A heavy silence fell over the command center. The officer continued. "It also contains records of humanity's greatest wars throughout history. Tactics, strategies, psychological warfare methods. Even simulations of how they would respond if we attempted to invade their planet. It's as if they've already calculated every move we might make." General Carr stared at the screen. The images displayed ancient war footage. Cities consumed by fire, millions of soldiers engaged in brutal combat. Atomic explosions, war machines reducing entire landscapes to rubble, and the terrifying depth of human warfare spanning across the ages. But the worst part was that humans weren't afraid of this. They had willingly shared these images themselves. A clear message. "If you come for us, we will make you experience everything we have endured throughout history." Carr's hands clenched into fists. This was an open threat, but it was also a challenge. General Carr took a deep breath, his eyes locked onto the battlefield footage. He finally understood what kind of species he was dealing with. One that did not fear death, that thrived in chaos, that had faced annihilation countless times and survived. For a moment, he thought, was it truly wise to wage war against such an enemy? He made his decision. Open communication with the humans. There are things we need to learn. The communications officer quickly worked to establish a connection. Moments later, the screen flickered again, and a clear image formed. A human appeared, middle-aged, with a slight smirk on his face. The symbols on his uniform marked him as the commander of the human fleet. The man crossed his arms and spoke. "You initiated this communication. That's more interesting than I expected." Carr took a deep breath. "I am General Carr, Supreme Commander of the Imperium's forces. I am questioning the necessity of this war." The human commander nodded. "A wise decision. But tell me, General, why did you open this channel? Was it out of fear?" Carr clenched his teeth but did not show his anger. "Not fear. Logic. You humans are different from the other species in the galaxy. Normally, a civilization as young as yours wouldn't be able to resist us. But you are different. I have studied your war strategies, and I must admit, you are far more complex than I expected." The human commander chuckled softly. "War is in our nature, General. Throughout history, we have developed countless ways to destroy each other. But for the first time, we are forced to use that intelligence entirely against an external enemy. You are our first real extraterrestrial threat." Carr narrowed his eyes. "And you have the audacity to challenge an empire as powerful as ours." The human commander's smile faded. "You misunderstand, General. We are not fearless. But when we are afraid, we fight. And if history has taught us anything, it's that we are at our most dangerous when we are afraid." General Carr analyzed the human commander's words. Humans might become even more dangerous when threatened, but the power of the Imperium was unquestionable. If they didn't show humanity who was superior, it would be seen as weakness. Carr's voice was ice cold. "I admire your courage, human. However, I believe you do not fully understand the power of the Imperium. This confidence that has led you to war can be broken." The human commander tilted his head slightly. "Oh? And how?" Carr turned to his officer. "Increase readiness level. Initiate the show of force." In orbit, the dormant Devastator-class super dreadnoughts powered up. Engines roared to life, and the void of space above the planet was suddenly filled with tens of thousands of warships. The Imperium's war machine was fully unleashed. General Carr clasped his hands behind his back and looked at the human commander. "Now, I will show you the truth." Suddenly, the Imperium's greatest weapon, its energy projection superweapon, activated. Invisible waves surged toward the human fleet. Within seconds, the shields of the human ships trembled violently. Systems flickered, short-circuiting under the sheer force of the energy field. For the first time, the human commander's face showed true surprise and concern. Carr smirked. "Now you understand our power. So, are you ready to surrender?" The human commander observed the overwhelming might of the Imperium. They were surrounded by thousands of colossal warships. Their shields were collapsing. The Imperium's superweapon was still active. Yet, there was not a trace of fear on his face. Instead, he smiled. Carr's eyes narrowed. "Why are you smiling, human?" The human commander shrugged. "Because I pity you, General. Did you really think this would work?" Carr frowned. "Work? What are you talking about?" The commander leaned back in his chair, his voice calm and measured. "You fired your energy weapon to show us your power. It was impressive, truly. But you forgot one thing. Your weapon is recharging now, isn't it?" General Carr's expression froze for a fraction of a second. "And while it does," the human commander raised his hand and snapped his fingers. "We make our move." At that exact moment, the human fleet split apart in a coordinated maneuver. Their ships scattered among the stars, diving into the formation of Imperium warships. Hidden human vessels, undetected until now, unleashed hyperfusion cannons. In an instant, 3 of the Imperium's super dreadnoughts exploded in massive fireballs. Carr's eyes widened. Impossible! How did they… An Imperium officer shouted in panic. "Sir, the humans have been mimicking our signal wavelengths. Our systems are reading them as friendly ships." Carr's claws trembled. This was a bluff. The human commander inclined his head slightly. "Now you understand?" The Imperium fleet fell into chaos. Human ships, taking advantage of the false friend or foe signals, had infiltrated deep into enemy lines. Officers barked conflicting orders. Ships veered wildly to avoid collisions. Some tried to flee, while others fired blindly, risking friendly fire. It was utter disorder. General Carr stood frozen in his command center, staring at the screens in horror. For the first time in centuries, the Imperium's mighty fleet was crumbling before an organized enemy. Just then, the human commander spoke again. "General Carr, I understand the position you're in, but you need to know something. If we had wanted to, we could have already destroyed your entire fleet." Carr clenched his teeth. "You're bluffing." The commander smirked. "Am I? Then watch this." A moment of silence. Then, boom! A massive explosion erupted right next to the Imperium's command ship. Its shields failed instantly, metal plating tearing away from the hull. The humans had fired upon the Imperium's greatest vessel, but they had not destroyed it. "That was a warning shot," the human commander stated. "If you continue this fight, the next shot will be for you, Carr." General Carr's fur bristled. He took a deep breath. "Do not panic. Think. If they could not outsmart you, they cannot defeat you." His eyes swept over his officers. They were frightened, but they were still looking to him for orders. He could use this. "Order all ships," he said in a heavy voice. "Lower your weapons. We surrender to the humans." Gasps echoed across the command center. "Sir?" one officer whispered. Carr stared at the screens, his voice unwavering. "Just do it. That is an order." Within moments, Imperium warships powered down their weapons. Shields were deactivated. The human commander let out a small chuckle. "A wise decision, General Carr. This war is over." But deep inside, Carr smirked to himself. "No. You only think you've won." Quietly, he activated a private communication channel, one that only his most loyal forces could hear. General Carr analyzed the human commander's words. Humans might become even more dangerous when threatened, but the power of the Imperium was unquestionable. If they did not show humanity who was truly superior, it would be seen as weakness. Carr's voice was as cold as ice. "I admire your courage, human. However, I believe you do not fully comprehend the power of the Imperium. This confidence that drives you into war can be broken." The human commander tilted his head slightly. "Oh? And how exactly?" Carr turned to his officer. "Increase readiness level. Begin the show of force." The massive Devastator-class super dreadnoughts, which had remained motionless for months in orbit, finally came to life. Within seconds, the empty void above the planet was flooded with tens of thousands of warships. The full might of the Imperium's war machine was unleashed. General Carr clasped his hands behind his back and looked at the human commander. "Now I will show you reality." Suddenly, the Imperium's most powerful weapon, the energy distortion superweapon, was activated. Invisible waves surged toward the human fleet. Within moments, human ships shuddered violently as their shields flickered and systems short-circuited. For the first time, the human commander's face changed. A brief flicker of surprise and concern. Carr smirked. "You understand now, don't you? Are you ready to surrender?" The human commander observed the overwhelming display of force. They were surrounded by thousands of enormous warships, their shields failing, and the Imperium's superweapon was still active. But there was no fear on his face. Instead, he smiled. Carr's eyes narrowed. "Why are you smiling, human?" The human commander shrugged. "Because I pity you, General. You actually thought this would work." Carr scowled. "Work? What are you talking about?" The commander leaned back, speaking with almost casual amusement. "You activated your weapon to show us your strength. Impressive, really. But you forgot one crucial thing. Your weapon is recharging, isn't it?" Carr's face froze for a moment. "And in the meantime," the human commander raised a hand and snapped his fingers. "We make our move." At that exact moment, the human fleet dispersed in perfect unison, their ships darting through the stars, weaving into the Imperium's formation. Stealth ships that had remained hidden in the void opened fire. 3 of the Imperium's super dreadnoughts exploded in massive fireballs. Carr's eyes widened. "Impossible! How did they—" An Imperium officer shouted in panic. "Sir, the humans have mimicked our signal frequencies. Our radars are reading them as friendly vessels." Carr's claws trembled with rage. This was a bluff. The human commander bowed his head slightly. "Now you understand." The Imperium's forces were in chaos. Their sensors betrayed them. Their formation crumbled as human ships slipped through their ranks. Officers shouted frantic orders, ships collided, and others fired blindly, risking friendly fire. The once mighty Imperium fleet was collapsing. In the command center, General Carr stared in horror. For the first time in centuries, the Imperium's military was being utterly dismantled by an organized enemy. Just then, the human commander's voice returned over the comms. "General Carr, I understand your situation, but you should know something. If we wanted to, we could have already destroyed your entire fleet." Carr gritted his teeth. "You're bluffing." The human commander smirked. "Am I? Then watch this." A moment of silence. Then, boom! A massive explosion erupted right next to the Imperium's command ship. The ship's shields collapsed instantly, its armored plating torn apart by the blast. The humans had struck the Imperium's largest warship, but held back from completely destroying it. "That was a warning shot," the human commander said. "If you continue this fight, the next one will be for you, Carr." General Carr's fur stood on end. Carr's final gamble. Plan Theta. Carr took a deep breath. "Don't panic. Think. If they haven't outsmarted me completely, I can still turn this around." His eyes flicked to his officers. They were panicked, but they still awaited orders. He could use that. "Order all ships to stand down," he said in a measured voice. "We surrender." The command center fell silent. "Sir?" an officer whispered in shock. Carr didn't blink. "Just do it, that's an order." Moments later, Imperium warships powered down their weapons, shields lowered. The human commander laughed in disbelief. "A wise decision, General Carr. This war is over." But deep inside, Carr grinned. "No, you only think you've won." Silently, he activated a private encrypted channel, one only his most loyal soldiers could hear. "Activate Plan Theta." This was a deception maneuver used only in the most desperate moments. Imperium forces would pretend to surrender, and then strike when the enemy was most vulnerable. It was a flawless strategy. Humans would lower their guard, believing the war was won, and in that instant, the Imperium would launch its true assault. But what Carr didn't know, humans had already predicted this. The final trap. As the human fleet slowed, observing the Imperium's apparent surrender, a stillness settled over the battlefield. Burned hulls, shattered fleets. It was over, right? The human commander took a deep breath and spoke to his fleet. "Attention all units. The Imperium has surrendered. The enemy is unarmed. The battle is over." A wave of cheers erupted from the human ships. Soldiers, exhausted from the long war, finally allowed themselves to celebrate. And that was when it happened. Boom! Imperium warships unleashed a massive energy pulse. Human shields were down. The shockwave crippled their systems. "They set us up," the human commander roared. But it was too late. Imperium troops beamed aboard human ships, guns blazing. Human soldiers scrambled to react, but many were cut down instantly. Carr watched the chaos unfold from his warship's bridge. "Fools," he muttered. "You never won this war. You only thought you did." Imperium soldiers stormed the human command ship. Explosions rocked the halls. "Capture the commander alive," Carr ordered. "The Emperor will see proof of our victory." But as his troops closed in, a laugh echoed through the chamber. The human commander, bloody but still smiling, looked directly at Carr. "Nice move, General." Carr scowled. "What are you smiling at?" And that was when he saw it. Blue lights flashing in the void. A sign of new ships exiting FTL. Hundreds. No, thousands. And a voice echoed from the largest battleship. "To all Imperium forces, now it's our turn." And so the nightmare began.